The man did not look like he belonged with that girl. It was like 11 p.m. at Walmart. I literally just pussied out. That's all I stood there and I said, I'm not dying today. Not today. Combat with another man and actually physically fight and get some kind of injury and infuse some injury in the man. Chapter 2. Be genuinely interested in other people. A man that is not interested in his fellow men is the worst kind of man, or something similar that was said by Dale Carnegie in this book. But keep it in mind. Whenever you walk in a room, for example, what this means, I'll give you an example. Let's say you walk in some room, and you walk in a house. Anything, everywhere you walk in, there is some kind of history behind it. Let's say you walk in a regular apartment in New York. You think back when the city was just being built. When was that city built? Imagine all the people that lived there. There might have been, merchants who stopped at that house. There might have been, I don't know, old people who lived there who were wise and smart. There might have been people who died, people who survived something, people who made millions of dollars in that apartment. And all that stuff, it's like that's what you gotta think about when you walk around a room. Like, you feel the energy of it, if it makes sense. It doesn't have to be in a New York apartment. Let's say you walk in some classroom. You might think, well, I wonder who was in this classroom before me, and you get genuinely passionate about stuff. This is a very easy, now, this is just coming from me, but this is how you can stimulate yourself to think about something. Even if you meet another person, he has something. Like, imagine all the stuff he's been through, even if he's lived in, the place you live in. Things that you have never thought about existed, and that's just what makes you a wiser person. You know that saying, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. This is where it's coming from, because if you meet people like these and you understand, you absorb different stuff that they tell you, you begin to realize that there's so many different niches of those different things that you can get super deep in, and that you are never going to be aware of these little niches. Oh, you could be aware of it if you're like some genius, but if you study a lot, that's what kind of humbles you. But again, being genuinely interested in other people. So Dale Carnegie says, if you want friends, then do things for other people. That's not friends, okay? That is not friends. That's not friends. When you do things for other people and they are your friends, that is like the definition of bad friends. Because friends are somebody who are there in hard times. Bro, you learned this in kindergarten. What makes a good friend, come on, I don't need to say that stuff. I don't know what they teach nowadays. A definition of a good friend is stuff that you don't do for them. So I don't agree with this point of Dale Carnegie at all. Because a friend is someone you bond over the years, maybe. Maybe you find him. You just kind of go through similar experiences. You get in tough times. You save him. He saves you. And you generally feel good and, strong around that person. Especially male. Male people, we need a tribe and we need friends. But this is hard to find nowadays. So Carnegie says you should be smiling. You should be genuinely happy. This is a little bit interesting, because on the surface, if you're just smiling, that's not happy. That's just pathetic, You don't just I don't walk around being like, hey, tell me any successful person who's actually successful. I'm not talking whatever the heck, like some hobo who's like, yeah, actually, any person who is genuinely successful. You meet them on the street, they're usually not like, oh, what a beautiful person you are. They were usually walking around and they have a normal face. They're thinking about what they're gonna do next. But that doesn't mean that they're not happy. That means that they're just not smiling. You have to be grateful. Always, always, always be grateful. That's the one key thing. I walk around and I know that I'm grateful because I could have, anything that could have happened to me. The way my life got structured, you have to be grateful. The opportunity, for example, for me to touch this tree right now, I'm grateful for that. And whenever you do work and whenever you do stuff, you have to be grateful. You don't have to smile, but you have to have that mind. You could have been in Afghanistan in 1979, and you could have been fighting, at Taliban, and you could have been shot. Now it's probable, you could be somewhere where there's a ton of people who are suffering more than you, and you always, I have that in the back of my mind, no matter what I do, and that's what stimulates you oftentimes. Also, another good tip is if you walk around and whenever you do something difficult, you think about the end goal. You have to make a goal for it. So any goal, literally make any goal. You have a passionate goal. Let's say you want to get rich. That's a pretty common one, because usually men want power. Again, women want love and intimacy. Not all, but the majority. well, it's more status, not power, excuse me. But with power comes status. So, for example, let's say you're doing a hard job and you are working at a store, 9 to 5. There's nothing wrong with 9 to 5 jobs if you're a young man. Because, like, for example, I'm doing 2 9 to 5 jobs, and, you know, it's like, it's the best option that I have at the moment because I can't fully commit to a business that I'm doing. For example, let's say if you have I'll give something similar to, let's say you have a service that you're providing, but it's not fully off yet. Instead of just sitting there and pouring time into this business that probably, you know, will need time to advance because it's seasonal, a lot of the stuff depends from it. You could instead be working. So, and yes, you have to hustle, and yes, it's going to be hard, but if you have a goal, which is a very deep goal, and it can be dark. This is what I want to say. A lot of people think that your goals should be like, oh, hey, it's all happy. Nah. To hell with those happy goals. Who the hell wants those happy? Like, it's not all goals are happy. For example, like one of my personal goals, I'll be freaking like, I don't know, it's not going to be vulgar, but it's going to be authentic. I want to be like, let's say my goal is by the end of the year, maybe in a year, to get to the point of handsomeness where females look at me. Now that's obviously who I'm into, but if you're into somebody else, you do you. But if I want to get to the point where I'm so handsome, physically, like muscle wise and facially, that females look at me and they actually get like want to be with me, and then I get to choose. Now this is probably like, you're like, okay, that's not like, what is this? But who the hell is stopping you? Tell me. Maybe it's like, you got some goal that like you wanna beat a man. Like another one of my goals, it's again like, this is just, you might think like, oh, you can't do this. Like genuinely, if you look deep down inside you, you'll find stuff like this. So one of my goals personally is to be able to get in combat with another man and actually physically fight and get some kind of injury and infuse some injury in the man, because I personally feel that this will make me more into a strong man, and it will bring me closer to being a man in general, and having the capacity to defend somebody. Because boxing, for example, like I do boxing, but I train usually with pads. It's a whole different story when you're shaking. I'll give you a story. I was at Walmart the other day, and there was this man with a little girl. And this little girl, like the man did not look like he belonged with that girl. It was like 11 p.m. in Walmart. I'm present, because I have a birthday of somebody I know coming up, so I'm trying to look for like some last minute birthday gift. And the man is like, hey, he's like a bearded ass, like redneck dude, like freaking like, he was pretty tall. He was like strong. He was like fat strong, when you have like blubber and you have like a little bit of muscle. He had a beard, everything, like complete. I think he was a construction worker. And this little girl was like 3, and she comes out, she's like, hey, and then he starts saying some weird stuff, and I'm like, what the hell is he saying? And then he starts giving this girl money, and I'm sitting behind this row, so there's an aisle, and I'm sitting behind the aisle, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, this is not like, I gotta check this situation out. Like, damn. And at the time, what I should have done is I probably should have, dialed the authorities so they would have come in and investigated, but because I was like, well, I'm not like, am I a pussy? I'm gonna go talk to this man. And so I started getting off, sitting there in the aisle, and I'm about to like confront this man and ask like, what the hell's going on, with this girl? Because nobody, it's Walmart. They're little like skinny employees. They're like, I gotta get my, like, bro, what? They're not gonna do anything. And I'm like, well, I'm the only prime male in this room. I gotta do something about this. So what I started doing is I have my blood starting to rush. I'm like, damn, like this is kind of, my heart rate is accelerating. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna walk over and I'm gonna ask the girl if she's okay. I'm gonna tell the dude how he's doing. But then I get a little intimidated because I'm like, okay, well, I'm pretty tall. I'm personally 6'3", and I box. I'm like, if anything goes in combat, let's say we start fighting, well, then I'm gonna be able to probably knock him out because I have good endurance and he's an older man, so I'll outgas him. I'll be able to dodge his punches. I have longer arms, and I would most likely be able to, get him down first. But I'm like, what if he pulls a knife? That's not good. Then I'm dead because, again, no knife. You cannot use any defense against a knife. It's too dangerous. It's all those stupid. And I'm like, what if even worse, he has a gun, then I'm really screwed. So then I'm sitting there and I have this thing. It's like a, I'll show you. It's like a little knuckle, which I carry as a keychain. But, so I'm taking this knuckle off and I'm putting it on my finger. And I'm like, hyping myself up. It was so funny. If you saw me at that time, you probably would not recognize me. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go over there. So I get my knuckle, and then I just pussied out. I literally just pussied out. That's all I stood there, and I said, I'm not dying today. Not today. And I literally just followed the man around the store. And once I realized, I was like, I got a little more calm. I'm like, okay, well, if something happens, it's gonna be, decent there at Walmart. I calmed myself down, and I just left. But I did pussy out. And that's how I learned that I'm kind of a coward, and the way you humble yourself. But again, I'm off topic. It was just a good story. If you ever want to test a true bravery, not like, when you walk in some gym and you're like, yeah, I'll knock you out. When you know the guys don't have any weapons, don't have any guns. That's a totally different ballgame than when you go to Walmart or some, store, and there's a dude there who's huge, and you don't know anything. If he has a knife, if he has a gun, this is where true bravery comes in. Again, really humbling experience. But why I was saying that is, again, it's because of the goals. So one of my goals is personally to be able to fight a man and to be able to endure pain, because it is important. As a man, I feel like you have to be able to endure some pain, because if you're in some, that's such a primal thing. That's all we did back in the day. Think about our ancestors. All we did was fight every single day and endure pain, whether it was from an animal, from a neighboring tribe, from somewhere. It's just part of our DNA. So I think, in fact, back in, I forget which president it was. It might have been Andrew Jackson, or maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but back when the dueling was going on, like pistol duels, I think it was considered that a man was not a man until he's had about 4 duels in his life. I can't tell if it was 4 or 7 duels, but I think if you had less than 4 duels in your whole entire life, then you were considered not a man. Again, maybe too harsh, but maybe not. So whenever you do hard stuff, let's say it's like work, I don't know, if it's your training, if it's your facial exercises, if it's, specific martial art, if it's anything, whenever you do hard work that you don't feel like doing, think of your goals. Think that you're getting one step closer to them, because you are. You literally are. It's a fact. You are getting closer to your goals. But anyway, so next chapter is, we have chapter 3, which is the person's name is sweetest to them. A lot of the people, they like their own names. Do you like your name? Of course, you want to be referenced by your name. Feels a little more personal if somebody references you by their name. And an actionable step is, please, whenever you see somebody, the next person you see, you try to call them by their, you don't try, you actually call them by their name. Now, I've been having trouble with this myself, because it feels kind of weird almost. You're like, well, I don't want to, call this dude, if his name is, I don't know, John. You don't want to call, it's like, hey, John, instead of hey, sir, So it can feel a little weird, but once you get into the habit, you make a little bit of a better connection with the person. And pretty self-explanatory, Personally, I would love to be referenced by my name. If somebody referenced me, is a little bit, better. If you don't, up to you. But the majority, according to Dale Carnegie, do love to be mentioned by their name. And I think Napoleon, he took the time to write down some names to memorize them. So he would write them down, he would memorize them, and he would write it down again, and he would write it until he fully memorizes it, which is pretty smart again. But if it's some bum on the street, you don't need to know his name. If it's somebody you actually want to interact with, and you want to have future, conversations, future interactions with, then yes, you should probably memorize their name and refer to them like that. 4 is active listening. So this is important, obviously, because a lot of the people, they like to vent about stuff. Even in a business situation, what's the first thing when you had a job that they told you to do? Is to de-escalate the situation. You need to let the person vent. No, you know the reason why? The reason being is because if you, especially in an argument, try to budge in and you don't let the person finish, that same person, he gets he doesn't finish his train of thought. So he doesn't give a single damn about what you're talking about. He's like, I don't give tits about what this dude is talking about. I only care about what I want to say. So only, and only once they have vented and once they have told their thought, you say, it's even better if you synthesize with them. We'll get to this point in a second, but if you say like, yes, sir, I really understand your concern, and then you start talking, because then you've understood fully what they want to say, and they have already, blown their steam off. And in generally, it's not too hard. Like, whenever you talk to somebody, imagine like they're a university professor, like a very, very respectable guy who's lived a long life, who's had a hard life. For example, let's say he's a teacher. So have like a teacher to a student, and the two biggest ways to actually implement this, because there's a million ways to it's like mimic their what was that? It's like mirroring. Yeah. So like when the person moves one way and you move the it's just clown stuff. Don't do that stuff, please. It's just weird. Nobody does that. The two probably most important ones, or two most important ways that you could listen to a person, is number one, by nodding. So whenever they, again, not excessively, don't be like yeah, yes, like, be like, whenever they're speaking something, occasionally give them a nod. Be like, okay, yep, makes sense. And then, what you can do is also at the end, again, even less often than nodding. So, even less often, whenever they finish some sentence, you kind of rephrase it. So if they said like, and you gotta go there, and you need to do this. And so, you say, okay, so I'll go there, and I'll do this, right? Yes, that makes them feel important, that makes them feel valuable. With employers, also what helps is if you ever get a job and you want to get a job, what you should do is you should get a little like notepad. Get a notepad and just write, like they'll be blabbling, even if it's like useless bullshit. If they're talking about, like, yeah, and back in the day I used to do this and we did this, so I'm like, yes. But I'll get to that point in a second. Again, keep that in mind. Active listening. Always let the person talk. But talk in terms of other person's interests. So what you do here is basically pretty self-explanatory. Just when you go to a job, you study the job, for example. So let's say you're applying at some, big corporate job. Well, you can take a documentary, and YouTube is perfect for this. Just take a documentary, study what the company's about. Then when you get inside, you can feel the atmosphere of the building again. This is why you have to be genuinely interested in people. So because you're interested, you already feel the atmosphere there. And then what happens is you can go ahead and you have all the ropes in your hand when you sit down in the interview and you get interviewed. Especially if you know a little bit of psychology, then it also really helps too. But again, very simple. 6 is make the other person feel important and do so sincerely. Now this is obviously makes sense because it's really easy to see people when they're not sincere, when they're just like, yeah, you have to be genuine. Again, be genuinely interested in people. So the way this helps is don't expect anything back. Literally just talk about them. And the best way to fix relationships, let's say, this is a power tip. Nobody talks about this. If you want to fix relationships with your mom, for example, let's say you've not been in a good spot, do this one thing. This one thing will change everything. That thing is buy flowers. Get $5 bills. A $5 bill. That's all you need. You go to like Walmart or some, store, super cheap. You buy a little bouquet. Just out of nowhere, like literally no occasion. You're gonna be like, well, that's kind of weird. No, it's not, because that's the way you're supposed to act. Just take that bouquet, bring it to the door, and just hand it to her. I guarantee you, she will be so surprised. No matter what time of day you come and do this, the rest of the day, I can guarantee you, the rest of the day at least is gonna be amazing. Now, if it's not, then you did something wrong, because it cannot be other ways. So, you can make people feel important, and you can also use things like common courtesy. So when you say like, would you please, may I, excuse me, would you, I'm sorry, thank you. It's, it's stuff like that. So, because again, it makes the other person feel important. Common courtesy and genuine interest in people. A power tip what you could use is, if you really don't want to be too genuine, you can take your pride and ego and you shove it up one place, you know what I'm talking about, and just smile at the person and say, yes, I can do this, like, yes, and you absorb the knowledge. But in the back of your mind somewhere, you might still be like, well, this person is a dumbass, but you take what you need to take from that person. That's a very interesting key. Again, this book is super similar to the 48 Laws of Power. Pretty interesting. So, for example, the way it will work in a job setting is you are genuinely interested in the place, you come in, and you just decide to ask a question. It doesn't have to be a question that's like you're super serious about, just like, oh, what does this do? And then you use rule 4, which is let the person talk and you listen, you shut your big fat mouth. It's very important. Not a lot of people are able to just shut that mouth and just listen with your damn ears. That's what you gotta do sometimes. Just be quiet and you listen. And then you use common courtesy, and then you don't overdo this, but you nod, for example, you repeat them, and you say, no, thank you, and then that's it. Next, we'll talk about how to win people to your way of thinking. Very important. But till then, I'll see you.